My son-in-law pointed at the kitchen I'd built cabinet by cabinet. My house, my rules. My daughter stared at the floor. I took off my apron and walked out of my own home without arguing. 3 days later, a process server knocked, bank statements spilled across the table, and the cop stood by while he packed, right beside the deed with my name on it. Mornings in Astoria are as damp as a towel that never quite dries. This time of year, fog from the Columbia creeps across the porch and clings to the wooden frame I hung with my own hands years ago. I reheated a pot of salmon chowder from the night before, added a little black pepper, stirred slow so the milk wouldn't split. The blue and white striped apron was frayed at the edges, a gift from my wife back when we were younger, when we could argue until midnight and still laugh in the morning. Elaine is gone now, and the house is so quiet I can hear the spoon tap the pot, neat and dry like a reminder. Keep your voice down, Nolan. Don't raise it for a small heart. The back door let in a roll of cold air. Trevor came in smelling like cheap cologne mixed with rain. "My house, my rules," he said, sweeping a hand like he was inspecting stock. Then he set his bag on the counter, opened the fridge, pulled a beer, and jerked his chin toward the stove. "You have no business in here anymore, especially in the kitchen. I want this house tidy, under my rules." My daughter, Grace, came in behind him, holding a bread box. She kept her eyes on the hardwood floors I'd polished in summer and the wet soles of her shoes stamped two dark ovals. I thought she'd say, "Trevor, cut it out." Her mouth only twitched, her eyes followed the trickle of water on the floor. Her shoulders drooped like a thin raincoat meeting a hard gust. I set the spoon down. It made no sound, but in my head, years clicked into place. I'd taught teenagers how to build drawers that slide clean, no scrape, no snag, pulling open with a soft little whoomp, like a breath. I built this kitchen myself, every hinge, every pull. Men my age don't usually back away in their own kitchen, but age teaches you there are arguments that burn down the whole house just to win one more right sentence. "Did you hear me?" Trevor said, punching each word. "This is my house. My rules. You're just a guest." I took off the apron, folded it in half, and hung it on the hook by the window. The chowder still smelled rich. Steam fogged the glass and turned the world outside into an old photograph. I didn't answer. I looked at the wooden hook I'd screwed in, the little brass screw I'd turned, and then I walked away. Not because I was afraid of Trevor, because I know the price of one loud word. "I just want a peaceful house," Trevor added, softening his tone, soft enough to pass for nice if you didn't look too closely. "Maybe go stay somewhere else a few days. I'm making some changes." "The kitchen," I said slowly. "A house is for cooking, not for throwing people out." Grace flinched. I didn't look at my daughter's face. I was afraid of seeing an apology that never quite reached her mouth. 2 years ago, after refinancing, I'd made sure my name was right there on the deed again. All the papers sit in the file drawer in my office. I remember because I built that drawer, glides so smooth it closes with one push. I walked past Trevor, grabbed the canvas jacket by the door. The wind at my collar tasted like salt. I held the doorknob a second longer than I needed, long enough to hear my heart breathe, then opened it. "Grace," I said without turning, "I'm stepping out for a while." Mist lay across the back lot like a sheet. I slid into the old pickup, hands on the wheel. Calluses from shop class still roughened my fingertips. Decades of showing kids how to measure down to a millimeter, teaching them that a clean fit is as important as a pretty face. In the mirror, I saw the gray over my ears and the shadows under my eyes. I started the engine, waited for the hatch to lift. In my head, I stacked what needed stacking: deed, property tax receipts, roofing invoice. I don't remember how long I drove. When I stopped, a cheap motor inn on 101 blinked a neon M with one bar dark. The room smelled of cleaning fluid. I set my jacket on the chair and opened my notebook. First line I wrote, "Don't yell." Second line, "Call Avery Lynn." I dialed Avery, real estate attorney. A friend at church had recommended months ago when I asked about notarizing. Her voicemail picked up. I left it short. "This is Nolan Pierce. I need to review my deed and a few papers." Somebody said, "My house, my rules," while my name is still on it. I hung up and sat still. The heater hummed. I pulled an old photo of Elaine from my wallet. The paper almost bleached. "Honey," I said quietly, "I won't argue in the kitchen. I'll use paper and stamps. They make less noise than people." I slept light. Waking once, I remembered a bundle of envelopes Trevor asked me to receive for convenience, said they were work stuff. I once opened one by mistake, a bank logo, a short subject line, homeowner's insurance, policy addendum. I slid it back, apologized to him, even though it wasn't my fault. He laughed. "You're so old school." The way he said old felt like a paperclip pressing a spine. Fog still sat heavy in the morning. I went back while Trevor was out. Grace was in the kitchen with the lights off, clutching a cold mug. She startled when she saw me, eyes wet like they'd been catching fog. "Dad, I'm sorry." It sounded like breath more than speech. "Did you sleep?" I asked. She shook her head. "He wants to change the locks," she said after a beat. "He says for safety." I didn't ask. Safety for whom? I went to the office cabinet, still tight as ever, bottom drawer out, and I took the papers. The deed, tax receipts, last year's roof replacement bill, the pin I used to sign. A lifetime can fit into a few sheets if you keep them straight. "I'm on nights," Grace said, almost whispering. "I'll call you after." I nodded. I left the old keys on the hook. If anyone tells you words can replace signatures, ask them to show you where to sign. I didn't pause in the kitchen. I knew the chowder would still smell good, but it had a sting in the throat now. At the door, my hand went to the porch post, sanded so smooth Maya wouldn't get splinters when she played. I went down the steps, knees ticking in my joints. Out on the river, a foghorn moaned long and low. 3 days later, a damp afternoon, a man named Malik knocked. Process server, black coat, hard case. He didn't raise his voice as he read Trevor's full name. I glanced through the window and saw my son-in-law in the driveway, bag in hand. This time, I didn't hang up the apron. I stood next to Malik and listened to the language of paper, the kind that holds no feelings but knows where everything belongs. That night in the motel, I woke often to the heater wheezing like an old man with a cold. I flipped on the yellow lamp and opened my notebook. "Don't yell," still sitting there like a freshly oiled hinge. I added bullet points: deed, bottom drawer, tax receipts, clipped, roof invoice, last year, insurance, call. I wrote slowly because none of it is just paper. It's winters that passed without leaks, dinners where Elaine teased me for salting light, the times I tweaked a cabinet pull so Maya wouldn't pinch a finger. At dawn, I drove to the diner under the bridge for black coffee and toast. The sounds at daybreak in Astoria are brutally honest. Spoon against mug, the tide report on the radio, the door's bell, wind in and out. I cupped the coffee and thought about this. People like to say you have to stand up for yourself. Standing is loud. Holding your ground, keeping a roof, sometimes takes only a pen, a stamp, and patience. Avery called back while I dabbed a coffee ring with a napkin. Her voice was steady as chalk on a board. "I got your message, Mr. Pierce. I need to see you and see the papers." "I have them all, and a little something Trevor left peeking out," I said, watching fog twirl like smoke beyond the glass. "He said, 'My house, my rules,' in a kitchen I built." She paused. "Then let the documents answer," Avery said. Don't talk to him anymore. 4 p.m. at my office. I nodded though she couldn't see. I'm not planning on saying anything loud. When I returned at noon, Trevor was gone. Grace had left a note on the counter. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm on nights. I'll call. Her handwriting shook. I stood over that line longer than necessary and went to the office. Walnut file cabinet, brass pulls, bottom drawer, gliding smooth enough I could feel the soft stop with my eyes closed. Original deed with notary seal, property tax receipts, roof invoice, insurance envelopes. I stacked them. Beneath the stack sat a flimsy clue, a copy of a UCC-1 financing statement, paper thin as a dry cough. Know my name, Trevor's ELLC. Lines incomplete, a shady scan, like its owner. I slid it into the folder. Passing the kitchen, the chowder had cooled, a film on top. I spooned some into the sink and ran the water. Watching something I'd cooked go down the drain felt like watching an old picture slip from your hands. I closed the pot, aligned the handle. I didn't want to leave anything Trevor could call messy and twist into a reason. Avery met me in a glass room facing a wet parking lot. Brown blazer, notebook open. She stacked my papers into 3 piles: ownership, maintenance spending, boundary violations. You were barred from your own kitchen, verbally, and told to stay somewhere else. You didn't shout, didn't escalate, didn't disturb the peace. She said, ticking the points. Good. Not good, I said. It hurts. She softened. I'm sorry. I meant legally. She lifted the UCC copy. Trevor may be using something tied to your house to prop up a loan for his LLC or making it look that way to a creditor. If there's a connection to your address, your insurance, or a line of credit drawn off your equity, that's different. There's an insurance addendum, I said, handing it over. Avery tapped a strange rider. Scheduled property bumped up. If he requested that with a scanned signature, we've got a pattern. I'll serve a notice to quit now, she said. File unlawful detainer. Start discovery for bank and insurance. Don't engage Trevor. Everything in writing. I called Grace, I said. I don't want her caught between 2 guns. You can talk to your daughter. Just don't argue with Trevor or send anything he can cut up, Avery said. Mr. Pierce, people will argue about this. Some will say you're dragging family to court and there's a child. I want you ready for that. I was ready the moment I hung the apron, I said, voice rough. Grace called late, the sound of a vending machine and hospital announcements behind her. Dad, she whispered, he said the house was going to be transferred. I believed him. He said you promised. I promised to cook in that kitchen until my hands shook too hard to stir, I said, sitting on the motel bed staring at a water-stained wall. I promised your mother I'd keep the roof. But a promise to sign the house over? No. Do you still have the old key I left you? I do. I keep it separate. Good. Are you off tomorrow? I am, but I don't know whether to go home or somewhere else. Go home. My home. I'm not throwing you out. But from now on, anything about Trevor, let the lawyer handle it. You don't have to be anyone's messenger. She went quiet, then said, I miss Mom. I'm ashamed I stood still. Silence is what people do when they're afraid, not when they agree, I told her. You didn't add fuel. That's enough for that day. 2 days later, Malik knocked as scheduled. Trevor opened the door, face trying for calm while his phone was already up. I'm being harassed, he told the camera. This is a legal notice, Malik read, handing him the envelope. Mr. Trevor Hale, you've been served. Questions go to your lawyer. I stood a few paces back. I heard paper tear. I heard the little click when his phone stopped recording. Then Trevor snorted. You think this circus gets me out? I have rights. You promised in front of friends that this house was for Grace. I have witnesses. Documents, I said. Court. He jumped tracks like a gunman out of bullets. You're hurting your granddaughter. You want her to see you kick her father out? I want her to grow up in a house without lies, I said. Behind him, a curtain lifted. A small hand grabbed the hem. I didn't want Maya seeing another second of this, so I nodded to Malik and walked away. Neighbors watched. Some waved, some looked down. I felt it. I accepted it. That afternoon, Avery called me back in. Good news, she said, eyes on the screen. First discovery is in, bank statements for Hale Contracting LLC. Note transfers from Pierce Home Equity LLC. I haven't opened any line of credit, I said, palms going cold. Right. That could be a bank shorthand, or Trevor trading on your name, or an old line exploited with fuzzy paperwork. Either way, 2 jobs. 1, confirm you didn't sign. 2, prove the money went to personal spending, not repairs or actual work. She slid me printouts, electronics store, gym equipment, concert tickets, credit card payoff, all a few months back. 1 deposit into Hale Contracting LLC, followed by a cash withdrawal 2 days later. We'll mark these as exhibits, Avery said. Temporary hearing next week. You can sit quiet. I'll talk. I'll ask for an order of immediate possession, handing you the house right away while we wait for trial. I just want a quiet kitchen, I said, and that apron hook to hold what it's supposed to hold. Quiet is something the law does pretty well if you use it right, she said. That night at church, Judge Evelyn Cross, retired and teaching a legal clinic for seniors, was slicing cake. She noticed me and tilted her head. Mr. Pierce, you look more tired than last week. My kitchen's noisy, I said. I'm tidying up. You know, she said, kitchens are where people confuse house rules with the law more than any other room. I've seen it plenty. Keep calm. Keep notes. I nodded. I didn't know that in a few days she would be on the bench for my hearing. The courtroom was plain, the fluorescent wash a little cold. Grace sat in the back row, fingers white on her tote strap. Trevor arrived with a shiny suit lawyer in a red tie. I sat beside Avery. When Judge Cross entered, we stood. My heart thumped 3 clear beats. Trevor's lawyer opened with a long sermon stuffed with terms: promissory estoppel, oral agreement, family reliance. He spoke like piling fancy words could become lumber and beams and build him a legal house around his client. Avery stood, opened her case, and pulled deed, tax receipts, roof invoice, bank statements. She said little short, like each sentence was a stainless nail hit square. These documents show Mr. Pierce is the sole owner. No written transfer, no signature. Any alleged promise fails to meet required conditions and cannot substitute for a writing. As to reliance, defendant has used property not his own to prop personal spending, barricading the owner from his kitchen and telling him to leave. Those are invasions of possession. She placed the notice, then Malik's proof of service. Trevor's lawyer tried. Dragging family into court is shameful, Your Honor. Judge Cross looked up, calm. This court does not punish people for choosing the law over violence. We rule on evidence. Mr. Pierce, she said to me, do you wish to speak? I stood with one hand on the back of the bench. I want to cook in my kitchen, Judge. I want my granddaughter to sleep someplace where nobody changes the locks in a temper. I swallowed. I don't want my house, my rules shouted over my name on the deed. She nodded. Enough. Ms. Lynn, your request? Avery asked for an order of immediate possession, a temporary no trespass against Trevor, and a writ of restitution if he failed to leave on time. Judge Cross poised her pen. Anything further from the defense? Trevor's lawyer glanced around and nudged Grace forward. His wife will confirm a promise. Grace stepped to the stand. The voice was small. I Heard my husband say, Dad promised. I believed him, but she looked at me. My father never signed anything. I, I'm asking to stay in the back rooms with my daughter. I'll return keys and I won't let him. Her voice broke. The court notes it, Judge Cross said, and you understand any conduct allowing the defendant in, secret entry, lock tampering, disturbance, will end your right to stay? Grace nodded, tears sliding to her chin. I understand. Very well, the judge said, and signed. Order of immediate possession to Mr. Nolan Pierce, effective now. Defendant Trevor Hale must vacate the premises within 24 hours, taking only personal items. Temporary no trespass remains in place until trial. Writ of restitution will issue if needed. The pen's glide sounded like a knife finally cutting through a rope pulled too long. Trevor opened his mouth, but his lawyer tugged his sleeve. He knew. This one was lost. Next morning, fog still beating the eaves, the sheriff's unit pulled up. Malik arrived too, case in one hand, pen in the other. Judge Cross stepped out of another car. She didn't have to be there, but she came to sign the writ if needed and to make sure I wasn't standing alone. Trevor was at the lock with a screwdriver. Seeing us, he froze. A deputy spoke clearly. Mr. Hale, per yesterday's order, you have 30 minutes to gather essential personal items. We'll supervise. After that, you must leave the property. This old man is kicking me out of my wife's house, Trevor said, jabbing at me. Do you realize she's his daughter? Antas. This is property titled to Mr. Pierce, the deputy said, voice level. Your wife is allowed to stay temporarily by court order. You are not. That word not fell wet as dew. Trevor swallowed hard and started shuffling in and out with boxes. I stood on the porch, my hand on the post I'd sanded smooth. Grace and Maya were in the back room with the door closed. I didn't want Maya to see this, but sometimes kids learn fastest by watching adults take responsibility. On his final pass, Trevor paused in front of me. You'll regret this. People will hear you kicked out family. I didn't kick out family, I said. I kicked out behavior. A deputy cleared his throat. Trevor hefted the last box, hit the slick step, and nearly slipped. Nobody laughed. Nobody insulted him. Justice doesn't need salt for the wound. Justice just stands there and lets a man pack. When the car rolled away, Judge Cross signed the writ to head off any late-night screwdriver ideas. She handed me a copy. Keep this close. Call this number if needed, she said, scribbling along the margin. Thank you, I said. I never thought I'd show up with a judge. I only came with the papers, she smiled. That afternoon, I replaced every lock, not to shut out Grace and Maya, but to shut out any temper holding a tool. I gave Grace 2 keys. Keep them yourself. No one holds them for you. We walked room by room like people inventorying memory. The photo of Elaine and me at the pier, the growth marks penciled on the shelf for every birthday of Maya's, the rocker where Elaine used to sit. I'm sorry, Grace said again, so softly I had to lean in. I was afraid of making him angry. I've been afraid for years. You don't have to apologize for being afraid, I said. But you should apologize to yourself if you keep living that way. She nodded and a tear slipped down. I filed for legal separation, she whispered like a confession. This morning, I didn't tell him. I have to protect Maya. I squeezed her hand. I knew you'd do the right thing. That night, I made new chowder. Maya stood on a stool, a tiny apron with a whale on it. She passed me the salt. I handed her the wooden spoon. We stirred together. Milk, salmon, pepper filled the house's empty spaces like a kind of mortar only time can mix. Grandpa, Maya asked, why did so many people come today? Because the house needed a quiet conversation, I said. Sometimes grown-ups have to ask papers who gets to be in the kitchen. Do I get to be in the kitchen? You always do. A week later, Avery called me back in. The rest of Discovery landed, she said, eyes tighter than usual. Emails from Trevor's account to the insurer asking to adjust property value and add scheduled items with a scanned signature of yours attached. I didn't sign, I said, fingers searching for a steady edge. I know. It's an old signature from your roof contract. He probably lifted it. We'll refer this to the right office. Civil, absolutely. Criminal, depends. At minimum, this is fraudulent misrepresentation. I leaned back and exhaled. I don't need him in jail, I said. I just need him out of my house. Men like that don't stop at one house, Avery replied. They stop when someone says enough and has the paper to back it. By the next week, Trevor lost his biggest client. Word moves fast in a small town, not because I told anyone, but because the numbers did. Creditors sent demand letters. The insurer opened an internal review. Trevor's lawyer offered a settlement. He agreed not to contest, not to return, and not to approach Grace or Maya except by schedule and supervision. I signed, not because I fear long litigation, but because I already had what I needed, a quiet kitchen. At church, those who'd told me to swallow it for the peace shook my hand hard. They didn't apologize with words. They brought 2 rolls of sandpaper, a box of screws, and a ladder. Let us help with those vents, they said. I smiled. Sometimes people fix wrongs not with speeches, but with work. Grace moved into the back rooms and repainted the walls a lighter color. One rainy afternoon, she stood in the doorway with tea. I used to think divorce was a huge label people slap on your forehead, she said. Maybe it's just opening a door that's been jammed. Don't slap anything on your forehead, I said. Tape Maya's school calendar back on the fridge. That's enough. Maya finished her first shelf, 4 boards, 8 screws. She stuck a whale sticker on the corner and looked up at me, sparkling like Christmas Eve. Grandpa, this says Grandpa's kitchen. She pointed to the watercolor sign she'd painted. I wrote it myself. Good, I said, throat catching like a crumb not yet swallowed. My kitchen, your kitchen. Trevor contacted Grace once through lawyers, offering to negotiate occasional dinners at the house. Avery answered with one word, no. You should know, she told me. Some folks will call you cruel. Others will say you were right, but cold. That's the controversy. I hear both, I said. But I'm sleeping. In the evenings, I sat on the porch listening to rain drum the metal roof like familiar fingers. Inside, Grace told Maya about work, an old man thanking a night nurse with an apple, a grandmother healing after surgery. The stories were so ordinary, they were beautiful. Ordinary is rare. Judge Cross called one morning and asked if I'd join a legal clinic for older adults. People squeeze by financial abuse from relatives or caretakers. You don't have to lecture, she said, just sit. When they ask how not to yell, show them your notebook. I opened it and read the first 3 lines again. I smiled. I'll come. At the first session, a man with thick glasses and a trimble in his hand said his son changed the locks and told him, if you don't pay, stay out of the kitchen. He asked, if I sue, am I the bad guy? I answered, don't yell. Use the papers. Keep the door open for those who respect it. I realized I was speaking to myself from a month earlier. He nodded and pulled a wrinkled envelope from his coat. Stories flowed like drizzle over the river, hard to count one drop at a time, but give it a while and the shoreline changes. One Friday, Grace came home early. I minced onion, melted butter, poured milk, dropped in potatoes. Maya counted to 10 and sprinkled pepper. While we waited, I took out a small box. Inside was a new apron hook I'd carved, 2 little curves like ripples, and a dimple to hold steady. Help me hang it, I told Maya. Same place. Let me mark center, I said, handing her a pencil. She drew a line. I drove the screw. The screw turning into wood made a low, pleasing sound. I hung the apron. The cloth swung just slightly like someone had exhaled. Will you take Maya to the farmer's market tomorrow? Grace asked. I want lavender. Mom liked the smell. Sure, I said. Your mother laughed when I once bought thyme instead of rosemary. You always mix up the fragrant ones, Grace smiled, eyes wet, but not breaking. We ate. I took a small bowl for myself. Months back, I'd been afraid dinner would be forever tied to the smell of fires from shouting. Turns out you can get the flavor back. Like when you salt a touch heavy, you add milk, add potatoes, and give it time. After, I pulled a piece of paper from the drawer. Not a court paper, just a scrap. I wrote, "A house is for cooking, not for throwing people out." I taped it to the inside of the cabinet door where only the person opening it would see. What does it say? Maya asked. A reminder, I said. Sometimes we need to read it again. On the main court date, Trevor didn't show. His lawyer came just to file withdrawals, dropping claims, accepting the no trespass, and proposing to arrange visits with Maya later through family court when there's a proper plan. I signed whatever kept life moving. Outside, the sun finally broke through. A gull skimmed the river and croaked. On the courthouse steps, Avery shook my hand. That's it, Mr. Pierce. What's left is living. Living is a word I know, I said. Thanks for teaching me the others. Courts aren't for winning and losing, she said. They're for putting things back where they belong. I drove home, opened the kitchen, and hung the apron on the new hook. On the table, Grace had left lavender. Maya ran up and wrapped around my knee, bright with a smell like fresh sun. I bent, knees clicking, and rubbed her head. At my age, every movement is a small inventory. What still aches? What's easy again? Grandpa, Maya asked, when I grow up, can I cook chowder in this kitchen? When you grow up, I said, you'll have your own kitchen, but this one will always have a place for you. Dusk came and I shut most of the lights, leaving a warm pool over the stove. My nose stung a little, not from grief, but from something else. Relief, rare as a rain that quits precisely when you've just hung the laundry. From the porch, the Columbia was a strip of silver. I thought of Elaine, of the days she sat here knitting and scolding me because I drilled the old hook a hair off center. I thought of Trevor, how he spoke big in my kitchen and looked small between deputies. I thought of Grace, how she chose truth over a last name. And I thought about the question people will ask me on AITA. Was I the asshole for taking my son-in-law to court and standing by while the cops watched him pack? Here's what I'd say. I didn't beat anyone. I kept a kitchen for cooking, a roof for shelter, and a boundary so love can't be used as a lever. If the price of peace is silence in the face of wrong, that isn't peace, it's mildew. If justice seems cold, remember, it's the chill of morning fog so the afternoon can be warm. I closed my notebook. The first 3 lines were still there, ink blurred a little at the corner. Don't yell. Use the papers. Keep the door open for those who respect it. In the kitchen, the new hook held the blue and white apron steady. It didn't say a word. It was simply where it belonged. And often, that's enough. I, a 71-year-old father, let the papers speak for themselves. My son-in-law said, "My house, my rules, in my deed." I hung my apron on a hook, walked out, and returned with the judge. 3 days later, a warrant officer knocked on the door, bank statements spilled onto the table, and the police watched him clean up. I kept the kitchen. I kept space for my daughter and grandchild. Was I overdoing it?